Hello, chums. Last month I had an article about form in Anomalous's extremely sick track Omnivalent published in Music Theory Online, which is a very cool open access journal with some of the more forward-thinking music theory scholarship. I get questions about what books to read about music theory in the comments a lot. As a quick side note, perusing the articles on MTO is a great place to start if you're looking to, read some of the actual current scholarship. There are quite a few articles about metal at this point. I'll link some of them in the description. But anyways, I'm going to be making videos about a couple parts of this article. You are, of course, welcome to read the full article if you want more. Metal Tropes 3 is about a specific type of section that shows up pretty often as a way to end a tech death song. What I wrote about this type of thing in the article didn't end up being much more than a footnote, but I think it's really interesting and I have a bunch of examples ready to go, and I'm guessing I'm not the only person to decide that all of these examples fit into the same sort of category. In the article, I called this type of section the tech death terminal climax, but I'm not sure this is the best name. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but let's get an idea of what type of section I'm talking about first. So, as is customary, I'll give a bunch of examples and then you give more examples in the comments, and I'll put together a master list with credit to whoever suggests each one. As always, these Metal Trope videos come dangerously close to opening a lot of really slippery questions about musical similarity. I'll talk a little more about that soon, but to get us started, I'm talking about a specific type of song ending in death metal songs, especially tech death songs, that sound something like this. Here's the section I talked about in the MTO article. And while this isn't the case for Omnivalent, it's often true that these sections come at the end of an entire album. That's what happens, for example, in Origin's Antithesis. And in Psychroptic's Initiate. I hope you can hear the sort of similarity I'm talking about already. To be a little more specific, I think what I'm hearing is some combination of: one, following a break in the texture, so often these sections are kind of set off from the rest of the song, and it's clear that we're starting a new section. Two, a lack of vocals. I think every example I have is instrumental. Three, a moderate or slow tempo, and often this is part of a tempo change from a faster section before it. Four, spacious sounding chords, so normally this is triads or modal sounds, so a lot of fifths and fourths, and they're often played let ring, so they're arpeggiated but with letting everything kind of bleed together. Five, there's often a layering of guitar parts, often including solos and sometimes including other sound effects or other instruments. Six, these types of sections normally fade out gradually. And seven, typically they are very repetitive, so there's some riff that we just keep going through a lot of times. Here are a bunch more pretty clear examples. my basic argument is that this is a definable type of section where the more of those features that I outlined above it has, the more strongly it feels like an example of this section. Because these sections are so common and they mean the same thing, that is, they mean this is the end of something big, I also argue that people who listen to a lot of death metal will recognize these as a specific type of section, consciously or subconsciously, and associate these sections with closure. Of course, bands can and do play with these associations and expectations. Cannibal Corpse devotes an entire track to this trope in Infinite Misery, which acts as a capstone to the album Kill, for example. And Opeth throws one of these sections into a song out of nowhere early in their album Watershed, which I hear as kind of like a witty use of this trope. So what should we call this type of section? Brad Osborne did some work on form in his dissertation and some later articles that involved coming up with a name, the terminal climax, for a certain type of section that we get a lot in alternative rock and progressive rock and all sorts of related subgenres, where a new section is introduced at the very end of a song and the section feels like the goal of everything that came before it. As I said at the beginning, in my MTO article about Anomalous, I called this sort of section a tech death terminal climax because of the similarities to Osborne's idea. But I'm kind of second guessing myself now, at least in some of these examples. Maybe a more accurate name would be something like the tech death coda. The difference would be whether these sections feel like the focal point of the whole song, like a high energy climax at the end, or if they feel like a coda, which would be kind of like a closing section after the main part of the song is done. It depends on the example and how I'm listening, what mood I'm listening in, or what I'm focusing on when I listen. But I think I'm generally leaning more towards the latter these days. But let me know how you all feel about this. These sections are also not necessarily specific to tech death, as you can probably already gather from the examples I picked. I'm not sure if they started as a tech death thing, or that's where I heard them first at least, or if they've always been a more general death metal thing. But all things considered, maybe a more neutral and accurate name would be something like epic death metal closing section, though this maybe runs the risk of becoming too vague, because I do still want to refer specifically to this type of section with all of those features I outlined earlier, rather than just any old epic death metal closing section. Let me know if you already have your own name for this type of section, or if you have any other candidates for a good way to refer to these. So yeah, I pulled my examples mostly from albums I was listening to a lot in the late 2000s and early 2010s, but I'm sure there are a lot more examples. Thank you in advance for the ones you drop in the comments. The boundaries on this one are a little less precise than the other tropes I've talked about, but I also feel like this is a definite case of you know it when you hear it. I hope you feel the same way. May your good fortune be infinite. See ya.